Hello, this is Erica Williams, reading response number 7 for AEAH 5774 Visual Culture Theories and Pedagogy, UNT Spring 2021. I try to include that in every introduction. The article for this week is Underrepresented: The Lack of Black Designers, featured in Harper's Bazaar in Vogue, written by Tamika N. Ellington. Um, let's go to the questions because I immediately started recording and did not read the questions. So, do you think the assertion on page 94 about how representation seems to be getting worse is true? If so, in what ways? Can you think of any examples when engaging with the media CRT through the CRT lens? What are you looking for in regards of representation? Annie, I love this question. So I don't feel like representation is getting worse necessarily. Um, well, now that I've said that out loud, it's kind of making me reframe my answer because I do believe that representation uh, for minorities, whether that's Black people, Latinx people, or any other minority group, um, Asians, LGBTQ, whomever. I feel like it's been very stagnant and just insincere for the last, I don't know, I would say 40 years. And anybody can correct me if I'm wrong or have more concrete information. But just from what I've perceived, it seems like representation, trying to include like diverse populations in media became a thing, like the token um, character became a thing in the 70s or in the 80s around that time. Um, and it's pretty much just stayed that way. We have, and again, this is just from my own point of view, it's like they started with, we have the one Black character, that's cool, that's enough. Sometimes they interchange that Black individual with a Latinx individual or somebody of another race, Indian, what have you. They might try to slide into um, and it's been that way, at least from what I've perceived, for the last 40 years, and it hasn't changed. So in that sense, I would say it has gotten worse just because the lack of progress. Because they've been consistent about having that one or that two token characters or token representatives, and that's it. And that has not grown. It hasn't become more genuine, where it's just whoever is the whoever is the best, whoever fits whatever role that is trying to be filled here outside of the spectrum of race and color. Those are the players that we display. That's still not the case. The case is very much um, what it is. So, um, what am I looking for in regards of her? And that kind of answers that last part of the question. That's what I'm looking for in regards of representation. I don't want to see, if we keep it in the frame of fashion, I don't want to see a Black designer who does urban streetwear. I want to see a high fashion Black designer. If it's a movie, a film, something like that, I don't want to see like the token Black, stereotypical character. Let the Black character be the lead. or let the Asian character be the lead and not be a computer whiz or a math whiz as a part of their identity. So that's what I'm looking for when it comes to representation, seeing minorities um, not presented in ways that are stereotypical and truly being included in the mainstream, not just one there to say that you had one. So, yeah. Question number two, CRT is used as the lens for this research. Does this increase your understanding of how CRT works in practice? Why or why not? What are some questions you walked away with? So I felt like this was a great article to kind of help us understand critical race theory a little bit better. As far as some questions that I walked away with. Well, before I dive into the questions, I do want to say that I liked the diagram that was on page. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick because I know that 20 minutes will get away from me. On page 7, the critical race theory converging lens, I felt like was a beautiful visual to help people understand CRT. So kudos to her for that. So some questions that I walked away with. I kind of want to save this for the end, but I'll go ahead and they're not necessarily just critical race theory questions, but just um, in response to the article overall. So on page 21, Ellington mentions that um, Black Americans or just Black people in general should start making their own periodicals, but more specifically, high fashion periodicals. And I was kind of thinking that already before I got to that page. That was page 21. I was already kind of exploring that in my mind already as I was reading, but it's kind of like a double-edged sword because yes, I do feel like the more we kind of just build up our community ourselves, um, I feel like the accolades will follow if but then on the other end I'm like, dude, why do we continue to desire to be a part of mainstream America after 400 years of not being not being wanted, essentially, and it kind of raises that question for me personally, just how can the Black community kind of just go back to trying to build itself up outside of the mainstream. And I know there have been so many attempts that have quite literally been shot down, um, bombed, etc. Won't dive into that too deep, but in this day and age in 2021, is it possible to kind of start that process again? And knowing what we know, be more be more successful or be able to sustain it and protect it. I think that because I definitely know we have the ability to sustain it and be successful, but protecting our community from white supremacy, I believe, is the real challenge. So moving on, my other questions were just the idea of fashion being a white male dominated industry, but the industry is the consumers of the industry are by wide and far mostly women. at least according to these statistics provided here. So that was a question that I have not had the opportunity to just explore and answer myself. And then lastly, is not featuring artists during I wrote Pride Months. I know that's not the correct term, but say Black History Month, Women's History Month, um, Mexican History Month, whatever. Is that a missed opportunity? I kind of, when I see, like, we just came out of February, we're moving into March, when I see businesses kind of try to cater towards these months, it does feel, it does kind of feel like a money grab to me, but then at the same time, despite what the what the intentions were behind them featuring minorities, those people still get these opportunities. They're still being seen. They're still being represented. So they still reap the benefits. Is is what I'm trying to get to. So kind of wondering just how people feel about that. Okay, so I'll move on to question number 3. What are your thoughts on Ellington's take on tokenism from page 105 to 106? How do you see tokenism in the media you consume? How does tokenism relate to CRT? Has tokenism affected you personally? I kind of already touched on this answering question number 1. Um, Being a Black woman, I'm super critical of representation, not only for Black women but for Black people and for other minorities, because I relate to the struggle, right? So you see the token characters, you see, and I'm speaking from like film and TV at this point, but and even just thinking outside of those realms, it still stands. My point still stands, but they're always framed, or they're typically framed the same way within their stereotypical roles, and that, to me, that's the biggest issue. Because I'm like, if you're going to try to be inclusive, if you're truly trying to be inclusive, you're not going to frame the minority character or the minority representative in stereotypical ways. In all honesty, you would think that, you would, in trying to bring or present this representative, you would be trying to break down those stereotypes. And the fact that that's not the intent, that the intent is actually just to reinforce them, I really rather you not see us at all, frankly. So that's, I think I can leave question